This fly is Al Troth's Elk Hair Caddis. It's become a standard fly all across the country, a favorite of many anglers. It's got a few little unique tricks to tying it that I'll try to walk you through. Tying down some of the hair can be a little bit of a trick, and wrapping the hackle with the wire is a little bit of a trick. So we're gonna start off by talking about the recipe, and then we'll go through the fly, and I'll try to show you those little details that'll make your Elk Hair Caddis a little better. This is tied on a Tiemco 100 dry fly hook. It's got a down eye, and I specifically like the down eye because it'll clear the front end of the elk hair on the finished fly. It makes the fly a little easier to thread onto your tippet. The thread that I'm going to use is 6/0 Danville in tan. The wire rib is fine copper wire. We're going to dub the body with some tan superfine dubbing, although you could vary the color of this dubbing to any color that you'd like, anything that you need to match the local caddis. And for the wing, I'm going to use natural colored bull elk hair, which is a pretty light blonde color. You can certainly use darker colored hair. Cow elk is going to be a little bit darker. It's going to flare a little bit more, and I specifically use the bull because it doesn't flare quite so much. It's going to make a nice upright wing profile on the fly that's going to stay in shape and not flare out all over the place. We're going to use a brown hackle feather to palmer over the body, and that's a pretty consistent part of the Elk Hair Caddis. Usually I stick with brown hackle. It's not to say that you can't mix the hackle color up a little bit, but I find brown seems to cross over for all the different caddis species pretty well. So to start this fly, I'm going to start the thread just behind about 2 eye lengths back from the hook eye. And I'm going to make a thread base going all the way back to the bend, and then I'll run forward one more time. And I'm going to tie in a piece of that fine copper wire. Now this wire in this case could be gold or silver or copper, any of those colors. This wire is not going to terribly show a lot, but it is going to reinforce our hackle. So it's important that it's there. It's not important what color it is. I'll tie this wire in along my near side of the hook, and I'm going to wrap back over it to the bend, just making tight concentric turns all the way back. And then I'll bump the thread forward to just about the midpoint on the shank. And this is where we're going to dub our abdomen. I'm going to pick out some of this dubbing, and I want a relatively thin layer, although on a size 14 it's a little chunkier fly than usual. I'm going to twist this dubbing onto the thread, and I want to try to keep it as thin and smooth as I can. Just working from the top to the bottom. And I'll use this bare thread between the end of the dubbing and the hook to work back so I can get my first turn of dubbing right at the bend of the hook. From there I'll work forward, just trying to make a single layer body, not much taper to it, up to about 2 eye lengths back from the hook eye. Once I reach that point, I can work back over the front half to smooth out the taper on the front end of the fly. We want it just a little more thick toward the front end than it was at the back. So I'm going to finish my taper off with my thread coming down onto those 2 eye lengths worth of bare space. I'm going to make a thread base just back and forth there. Now, while it's handy, I'm going to show you this trick. Now, I've got this little pinch of dubbing that I couldn't get off the thread. So rather than cut my thread and try to have to redo everything, or if I had a frayed section of thread, the way to get around this is I'm just going to put my finger on top of that and make a loop. I'll come back around the hook. So now I've tied this loop of thread down, and I can cut that out and get rid of it. So now I'm back to good thread, no dubbing on it. I'm right back in action again. So that's a handy little trick to know somewhere down the line. Now we're going to tie our hackle feather in. Our hackle feather is going to be about 1.5 times the hook gap when I bend it around the shank here. Get you a little better angle on this. And I always measure this feather over the dubbing. The dubbing itself is going to give the hook shank a larger arbor diameter. So the feather is going to be a little bigger. It's going to extend further past the hook point over the dubbing than it would over the bare shank. So you've always got to consider what you're going to wrap your feather over. I'm happy with the length of this feather, so I'm going to trim off the bottom, and I'm going to strip out just a few fibers off the base of the feather. I'm going to tie this in right at the front edge of the abdomen and anchor it down with several good tight wraps of thread. I'm going to palmer wrap this feather from the front to the back. and I've got the outside of the feather facing the front of the fly. So the hackle is going to downsize slightly as I work toward the bend. Once I get back to the bend, I'm going to take my wire down on the far side of the hook, reach under the hook and bring it up and over the tip of the hackle feather there at the bend, and that'll tie that feather off. Now here's a trick that people ask me about all the time, is how do you get the wire from the back of the fly to the front without binding down all that hackle? And the best answer I have for that is don't try to miss the hackle. Just try to wrap the wire as you normally would. The less you think about it and the quicker you do it, the less fibers you'll trap. So the best way to go about this is just wrap the wire forward like there were no hackle there to start with, and you never catch any of them. If you stop and try to miss some, you'll miss some on your near side, and you'll hit all of them on the far side. So now I'm going to snap off this piece of wire here at the front. I'm going to come in and trim out the tip of my hackle feather, and I can save that because I've got enough length left to do another fly yet. Now up here at the front, I've got 2 eye lengths worth of basically just shank with thread on it. I want to have my thread hanging in the middle of those 2 eye lengths, or 1 eye length back from the hook eye, 1 eye length forward of the body of the fly. And I'm going to leave my thread hanging there for the time being. We're going to stack some hair. I'm going to come back to twisting that thread up a bit, but in the meantime, we've got to get the wing prepared. So for our caddis wing, I'm going to use this natural bull elk hair. This nice blonde color is easy to see on the water, and the bull has got a thicker wall and a little less inside diameter. So it's still a buoyant hair, but it's very durable and it'll stack up nice and neat. I'm going to hold this hair as close to the tips as I can, and I'm going to clean out all this underfur. You can see all this short hair and underfur that's left in here. I want to make sure to clean all of that out, every last bit. You have to be really diligent about this. Any underfur left in the hair when you stack it will prevent the hair from stacking cleanly, as well as bind up on the fly and grab your thread. So we're going to get rid of all that underfur. I'm going to take this hair and put it tips down in my stacker. Now when you stack hair, there's a couple ways to do this. The stacker is made out of 2 pieces. You want to hold on to both pieces when you stack the hair. If you hold on to just the bottom, where the tube is jumping up and down, the hair is going to move up and down inside the stacker, and it's not going to stack nice and neat. So we want to hold the 2 pieces together and maybe slightly off to the side a little bit so the hair will all fall toward one side of the stacker. So I've got the hair stacked up. Now I'm going to turn my stacker sideways and take the bottom off. And you can see that hair is all stacked up nice and neat in a nice neat little brush. I'm going to take it out of the stacker, and now I have a little better idea of how much hair I've got, now that I've got it all evened up. And it feels like I've got a little more than I want, so I'm going to separate some out. And to do that, I'll just draw a few hairs off the side of the clump till I've got it down to a more reasonable size. Now another question people ask is how much hair is the right amount? And that really depends on the tire. The more of these you tie, the more comfortable you'll be gauging how much hair you can fully compress on the hook. And that's my sort of starting point, is how much hair can I get compressed on the hook. I'll try to use as much as I can as long as I can get it compressed. The fly will float better with more hair on it. So gauging from the touch of this hair and what I know that's going to happen because I've used this before, I feel like I've got the right amount of hair here. I've got a couple of short ones in there. I'm going to measure this clump of hair against the hook shank. Okay? My thumbnail on this back side is marking right behind the hook eye when I measure this clump. You can see the tips are just coming to the back edge of the bend. Okay? I'm going to come in and just butt my fingers together. So I've got this hair right even with the end of my thumbnail, and I'll trim the butt ends of that hair off as square as I can, a nice straight cut with your sharpest scissors. So I've got this hair pre-cut to length in my fingertips now. Now while I've talked, my thread is unwound and flattened out a bit. I want this thread to be a little more round and corded up so it will bite into this hair, and I want to get it kind of placed back where we started there. So I'm 1 eye length back from the hook eye. I'm going to lay this hair in, and you can see how I'll set those butt ends just behind the hook eye. That will assure that I don't get any of the butt ends in the hook eye so that it's easy to thread the fly when I go fishing. I'm going to take 2 turns of thread around this hair, one right on top of the other, and I'm going to draw the thread toward me to anchor it. To anchor this hair further, I'm going to make a band of thread that travels back toward the bend. Now I'm going to whip finish right on top of this band of thread. So I'll reach in with my whip finisher. I'm going to put the turns right on top of that band, 4 or 5 turns, cinch that down, and trim my thread. I can kind of puff my hackle up a little bit because I pinched it when I tied the wing in. But you can see how the hook eye is totally exposed at the front. We've got a nice little stub. That stub is not necessarily to imitate the head of the caddis, but what that is to anchor the hair down. We've got the hair compressed under the thread wraps, but still full diameter on the front and the back. So that'll anchor the hair and keep it from sliding out. We've got a nice clean-shaped wing that's not flared out all over the place, much more imitative of a real caddis wing, and the long hackle legs that will make this fly skitter and dance on top of the water. Great little fly, a few little tricks to tying it.